Thank you all for coming. My name is Dean Case. I'm with SAE SoCal section. This has become our regular home, and I think tonight is perhaps the first official Landspeed Louise fan club meeting, because I think half the people already know you. But this is a lot of fun. We try to gather up once a month or so with some interesting technical speakers, but also not just technical, but some of the stories behind the technology, if you will. So I've known Louise for over 25 years, I think, partly through the Motor Press Guild, which kind of leads me to, we've got SAEs doing so well right now due to collaborations. We've got great support from some of the partners. We've teamed up with Motor Press Guild. Dave Bolt's there, so if there's any journalists or aspiring journalists in the room, Dave will probably sign you up to be an MPG member. We've done some great things with SEMA, and I'm assuming everyone in this room knows what SEMA is. We have a spring workshop for the students. This past March, we had 425 students from 30 schools show up. And just as importantly, about 13 companies they're hiring. My friends from Motivo are here. They were there actively hiring. So, you know, we'd like companies to use this a little bit of a forum. If you are looking, is there any company out there looking to hire? Raise your hand so that those people who are looking for jobs can find you. I know we've got a couple of recent graduates here. We have one student who flew in, who's not from this area, but came down to check this out. So where's Theo? Raise your hand. Over here. Recent mechanical engineering grad from Washington University in St. Louis. Get the school's name right? Okay, good. So we've also got, we've invited our counterparts at SWE to come here, and one of our newest board members, Vanessa Belk, has started a group, Women in Automotive and Engineering. So we're trying to collaborate as much as possible because we've got shared interests of helping to grow anything that's automotive. And keep in mind, the SAE definition of automotive includes aerospace. So hopefully we did an event at the Santa Monica Airport last month on the world's first FAA certified electric airplane. And we'd like to do more of those activities. That one, we couldn't get the airplane in this building, so we had to do that at the Santa Monica Airport. And if you want to mark your calendar, our next event here will be on August 21st, and we're going to be talking with Evo Electric on their electric truck program. So that should be a really interesting program. You know, we won't go into the politics of how the EV market is right now, but it should be some interesting technology to discuss. And they have an interesting business model that really doesn't really depend on credits, if you will. So without any further ado, I'd like to bring up one of the foremost historian on all things about Bonneville, Landspeed Louise. She jokingly refers to the fact she has a PhD from the University of Concrete, yes. So, but anyway, take it away. And the format's going to be, Louise is going to give a presentation on the amazing women who've set world land speed records at Bonneville. And then she has assembled an unbelievable panel here because I think you know everybody in Bonneville and El Mirage.
Well, no, not everybody, but
okay, a lot of them. So she has brought us a great panel. And you know, here again, promote this via social media, promote the museum. For those of you, how many of you first time to visit here? Okay, quite a few of you.
That's good.
Rick Lorenzen was the person who founded this collection. It was his personal car collection. He turned it into a 501c3. It's a nonprofit. So any of you work for large companies and you need to have a big business meeting, don't rent a hotel room. Rent this room. Because this place is not going to stay alive with us individually paying 10 or 15 bucks. It needs corporate involvement here. And it's a spectacular facility. So without any further ado, take it away.
All right. Hey, thanks. This is going to be a little more casual. This is the first time that I will give this type of presentation because this is going to be a very constricted show. Mostly when I do these things around the country for SAE and in universities where I try to talk to the engineering students, my show is between 30 and 40 minutes, and then depending how many questions, it goes on from there. However, in Southern California, unlike where I'm in another, like I came in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, I had one lady I could have at the event that I had her come and answer questions. Normally it's only one. We have 10 tonight. And it was Dean who came up with this idea of the panel. Normally I'll take all the Q&A and I'm happy to answer it. But tonight I'm just going to moderate because I don't need to answer these questions. The people who set these records, who build these cars, who drive these cars, who fix these cars, who dream these cars up, that fabricate these cars, the ones that help them go fast are here, and they can answer those questions. So essentially, we're all virgins here tonight. I know when you woke up, that probably wasn't what was on your mind, but we are. This is a virginal experience, and I'm very glad to be here. I'm delighted. Dean and I spent more than a year trying to figure out how to make this happen. So here it is. What I'm first going to do is just go through my latest book, which is Women in Land Speed Racing. The reason we're standing here and I'm here tonight, after I'd been involved with this sport more than 20 years, it took that long to answer the question or come up with the question. Gee, I wonder how many women have driven. Well, you know, I put together a list and so on. And it wasn't until one picture in here, which I will point out to you, showed up, that the anvil came down and hit me in the head, and I asked the right question, which was, how many women have set land speed records on the Bonneville Salt Flats? 120 days later, I had documented, and I mean certified, more than 350 women who had set more than 1,000 land speed records from ages 16 to 80, but only since 1972. But they've been racing out there since 1949. Most of the audience is going to be upset now. It's because the teeny tiny testicles did not want women to drive because nobody wanted to be by a girl. Don't matter if she was 80 years old. When she was 80 years old, if she was a girl, if she went faster than you got beat by a girl. That was the reason. And it wasn't until 72 that the Southern California Timing Association was forced to let women enter in competition, to earn the right to go to the starting line just like anyone else. You have to build it, you have to present it, you have to pass the safety and the tech inspections, and then you earn the right to go to the starting line, and that's where it all stops, and the only thing that counts is the clocks. So let's go. Oh, please start. God. All right. Land speed racing started here. It's about 40 miles outside of Paris, a little town called Acher. And when we were there a few years ago for a car show, I went looking for this piece of ground because I wanted to go where all land speed started. In 1898, Count Chasselut Labat had an electric car, and he just said, I think I want to see how fast. And how fast I am with my friends, I'm just going to declare myself the fastest on Earth. And he did that. Went 39.24 miles an hour. Well, that just irritated the daylights out of the Belgian guy, Janatzi. And that is when the very first purpose-built race car in land speed racing came. It was called the Never Satisfied. And that became the big fight back and forth, the very beginning of land speed racing. When we were there, I went up and down this road, I don't know, 20 times as fast as I could looking for a cop. If ever a woman wanted a speeding ticket, it was on this piece of asphalt. Nothing. See the lady there? She's in the audience. We'll talk about her a little later, but she's actually leaning against one of the 3 big stones that explain what happened on this piece of the stretch of land right there in 1898. That's the beginning of it all. The very first woman and the very first racing happened on the dry lakes in Southern California, El Mirage, Muroc, places like that. And the first girl that got to drive was Vida Orr. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out where this needs to be. Anyway, you'll notice that she's being pushed by not 1, not 2, but 3 guys. The reason is the car is a little heavy. There's a fella in the trunk. He's a cam grinder, and he can't really figure things out back in the day. This is in the 30s, 40s maybe? Nah, 30s. And he says, I need to hear it when it's at speed. So she hides him in the trunk. 2 of the guys know he's in there, and they just help push start the car. He figures out what's going on as the car goes through the lights, goes home, regrinds the cam. She comes back the next day, da-da-da-da, sets a record. You know, it's whatever you do with the rules. Now, I want to point out, you see the guy sitting there? That's Vita Orr explaining her engine, her flathead. That, my friends, is Wally Parks before he ever thought about drag racing and he ever thought about the National Hot Rod Association. And she's telling him how the car works. The only reason Vita got to drive, because her husband Carl, you would not want to argue with him, my wife is driving. He didn't ask, he told him she's driving. But after a while, Bonneville got to be a dangerous place. The dirt, when you'd get a flat, your wheel would dig in and you'd probably end up in some kind of catastrophic something. And many of them did. They were either hospitalized or there were some deaths. So when you go to Bonneville, it's always wet. Even if it's 100 degrees out there for a week, it's always wet. You kneel down, you'll get up, your knee will be wet, even though it looks dry. But it's a great place to go. Bonneville started, I don't know, 10, 12,000 years ago. So let me point out something. There's 3 ancient seashores here. This is a trapped ocean. Right there, that is the Bonneville Terrace. That's where it started. Earthquake, brrr, all the water goes out, and the next thing you know, there's the Provo. Oh, a few thousand years go by, brrr. Next earthquake, that's the Stansbury, and it stayed there. If you go up here, even today, you will find seashells. They're still there. I know, I've got some. From there, over the next few thousand years, it just evaporated. There is no freshwater feed here, only underneath that goes through these various rivulets. And as it desiccated down at a very slow rate, that's what built the salt structure. And this can be up to, it was used to be several feet thick. And it's one of the greatest racing surfaces. The first gal to race at Bonneville, remember I said it wasn't until 72? I put my book out, and Peggy Hart's son called and said, Louise, you're wrong. Never fails. You publish it and then they tell you. And he said, my mom was the first. And I said, when? 1955. Oops, hold on, go back. Push the wrong button. Oops, go back. See that? 1955. Well, this was another fella you didn't argue with. And if you know anything about Lyons drag strip, no one was going to tell Peggy wasn't going to drive because they would have to have, shall we say, a very serious conversation with Cloyce Joseph Hart. You know him as C.J. Pappy Hart, the guy that really put drag racing together in this nation. She ran the car, and she has that, and her son said, I'll send it to you to prove it to you. So I'm so glad that he did. So now I'm revising my book. She was the first woman to ever drive at Bonneville under competition. All right, Bonneville, if you've never been there, is the biggest place of nothing you will ever see in your life. You can drive for 100 miles all around. You can drive at 100 miles an hour with your eyes closed for more than a minute, and you will never hit anything. Somebody told me that, and I thought it was baloney. So after the first time I went there, when everybody went home, guess what? Yeah. And I liked it so much, I did it a couple more times. Oh, we got to go back. All right, again, I keep realizing I'm sorry. I'm trying to set the tone for Landspeed racing for those of you that don't know. Here, the 3 main cars of Landspeed racing started first with the Roadster, then the Belly Tank Lakester, and then the Streamliner. Those 3 cars are the triumvirate that started this sport. Then the coupes, then the sedans, then the motorcycles, and everything else came from there. And the only reason it's called a Roadster, because that's what it was when it was built by the car companies. But the first purpose-built car is this, the Belly Tank Lakester, because when they came back from the war, the Second World War, the guys, the served, saw these drop tanks and fuel tanks and whatever. They said, I don't have to beat that metal into shape. I can just cut a few holes and we got aerodynamics. This would be a lot easier. Hence the Belly Tank Lakester. And it's called Lakester because it was for the lakes, the dry lakes. And then the Streamliner, that gave rise to that. Once those belly tank Lakesters weren't going fast enough, they had learned about aerodynamics. So da-da-da-da, and that's how it goes. So let's look at that. Chick Huntemer, she's not only working on her own car, she has told her husband, stay out of the garage and keep your hands off the tools. She not only does her own car, but she drives it, set a number of records, and I'll notice, see all that pinstriping up there? She's a great artist. She did all of that as well. So there's your Dreadster. Belly tank Lakester. That was actually the one that was in that photograph. Jerry Kelly set a number of records in this car. This was the very first Lakester, but this car, again, they reached their limits. They had great design, but they had design limits. The next car this is a Lakester. Looks a lot like a top fuel dragster, but this thing goes over 350 miles an hour. Anita Strasberg is also a drag racer. Back in the day, most of the cars in Landspeed racing also went to the drags. They just changed the gearing, a couple of things, but it was the same car. Now, the thing here, you can see that Anita, 346 miles an hour on the day I was there. But this is the one I want to talk to you about. Jenna Montover, when I talked to her, was there every single time with Grandma. And I went, Jenna, how long have you been on Grammy's race car team? And she would give me the attitude and go, I have been on my Grammy's race car team ever since I was in my mommy's belly. And you know, when a kid like that, that's 7 years old, said that, you know you better not argue. That's her and her junior dragster, by the way. Grandma bought it for her. Now to the Streamliner. This particular car that's on the right here was built originally in the late 50s by the Vesco family. Ronnie is third generation. She is about to get in the car and set a 300-mile-an-hour record and join the 200-mile-an-hour club. Her grandfather built it. Her father and her uncle drove it, as her and her brother did. This car is still running today, and one of the gentlemen that is on the panel actually took the internal combustion engine out of this thing, and he did something interesting with it. We'll get to that. This opened the door for a variety of other types of coupes and such. This is a Citroën. You know, the French, they always stick their nose back into something. Sylvia is one of the gals in this piece of artwork, and Robin Millar is here. This is a piece of art from Pete Millar. If y'all have ever read Hot Rod Magazine, you've seen Pete Millar's cartoons, and it's these C-A-R tunes. This lady is in the audience. This is Marcia Holly. She's the first one into the club. This is Tanis Hammond. She's in the audience. And this is Sylvia Hathaway, the first 3 women to earn red hats. And a red hat, for you that don't know, that's the Bonneville 200-mile-an-hour club, where you had to set a record in excess of 200 miles an hour. Well, this club's been going on for so long, you can't get into certain parts of it until you go 400 miles an hour because the record is so high. Darlene, there's some people and gals that don't drive. They just tune the cars. She was an exceptionally good tuner on this car. Down from San Diego, I believe. Petulant thing. Gosh. All right. Christine Klein, interesting, from Texas. That Studebaker on the left, she pulled her race car all the way up from Texas to Bonneville for it. She built and restored both of those cars. That is her in the car, all set up, ready to go. And she is showing you that she's happy because she had brought that car, and you have to earn the right to go fast. I don't care how much of a great driver you are anywhere else. It doesn't matter. Don't bring the attitude. You will be told to go at 125 to 150 to 175 and 200. It's not that they don't know that you're good. Mario Andretti had to go through the same doggone thing. They need to know that you can control the car on this surface, and they need to know you know where you're going, because you can get lost. Been there, done that. And they need to know that they can rely on you to listen to the instructions. And once you prove that you can be a proper land speed racer, they will give you a higher rated ticket. Here, she was able in 1 week to up her license twice. But there were also almost 400 people there. She probably could have got all the way to what she needed to. There was just a lot of folks. So that's a little background. Kristen also teaches girls. They tried to make them, not necessarily make a mechanic out of them, but she said, don't rely on the guys. Learn for yourself. Do you know that you can probably change your own tire? You don't need to be strong. You just need to know how to put that lug wrench onto the tire, and you can break it free, and you can do it yourself. And she shows them how to do tires. She said the look in their eyes, it tells them that they can do something that they thought was forbidden and they would never be able to do. Kaylin Stewart, I think she's the youngest, if not one of the youngest, to ever earn recognition in the 2 Club. See the red hat on her head? She just drove that truck with, if I'm not mistaken here, correct me in the audience, a repurposed NASCAR engine was in there. And that was, yeah, oh, Donnie says okay. That was something that Mr. Jessel, who owns the truck, yeah, you know him from some of the parts, he said he'd watched her for years, and he said, you need to get a record. So he put her in the car, or in the truck, and she didn't let him down. Maddie Stringfellow, see the cap and gown? This is a girl that as soon as she got her driver's license, she came to Bonneville and drove the family roadster to a record, and then went back and picked up her high school diploma. And she did not wash the cap and the gown, and that's how she wore it going up to get the diploma. And yes, they're fireproof, and that's what she wore on stage. So cool. She's 3rd generation as well. And they come from all over the world, not just in America. Zofia Prophet, I'm introducing her to you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the fastest woman in Poland. She went from rookie to record setter in about 3 days and 6 runs, driving that streamliner. I think it was 260 something. I don't remember exactly. It's in the book. I don't remember all the numbers. Also, Kei Kinomoto and Mayuki Tanakan came from Japan, different parts of Japan. I couldn't find Kei's car, but I wanted her face to be in this show. But they come from other countries as well. These are only the ones that I had. Oh, go back, go back. This gal, very interesting. She went from rookie to record setter, and she went from 0 to plus 300 miles an hour. She was the first woman to earn the top time trophy given every year since 1949 for the fastest one-way run at Bonneville. First gal, first time, first rookie. But I used to think it was the first roadster. No, the first roadster went to a fellow by the name of Al Teague. He reminded me of that. Notice her terminal speed, 303. Oh, at the time, she was one of the gals at NASA. When anything that was up in the sky, she was responsible for its cybersecurity. She's now, literally, the top engineer for working on autonomous semi-tractors. And I'll tell you what she has done so far is pretty astonishing. Not for the road yet, but we're getting there. Now, this lady is in the audience. I met Tanis, and that particular picture there is when she joined the 300 mile an hour club in the family race car that her husband built. He was nice enough that he wanted her to get into the 300 mile an hour club before he did. Gracious, ladies first. I was there when she set this one, the 3 Club. I don't know, 10, 15 years later, I stood at the starting line with this gal as she watched her daughter take off in that car. How many mothers could stand at a starting line knowing that thing could go 300 miles an hour, and there goes her baby? I didn't watch the car. I kept my eyes on Tanis's face to see what was happening when her daughter left. Today, they are the only mother-daughter group that can say, we got 300 mile an hour records. That's some serious bragging rights at the bar. Mm-hmm. Susan Christofferson, this was her honeymoon. She came to Bonneville. Her husband had set records. A number of the other people had set records. Oh, honey, you should try this. He introduced her to motorsports. She ended up in the 200-mile-an-hour club. When's the last time you have seen a Camaro with a parachute? She set the record, joined the club. Eventually, they went on to another form of racing, vintage nostalgia racing with a 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air that they call Susie Q, and she drives 200 miles an hour regularly until they retired and sold the car. But this started it for her. Betty Birkeland. I think she was the first grandmother to join the 200-mile-an-hour club. But before she joined, you see that? Studebaker, altered Studebaker, big streamliner. The Birkeland families out of Great Falls, Montana have been racing for many, many years. When her son went into the service, he had a lot of time on his hands, and he designed this thing in his head, came home, and they built it. And they raced this thing to over 450 miles an hour. However, she had helped so many people that so many of those teams finally said, that's enough, Betty. They parked 4 other race cars. And they all volunteered to help Grandma get into the 200-mile-an-hour club driving this thing, which is one wicked competition coupe. I like this shot, but I can't show you just how long this is. It is a wicked thing to drive. 263 miles an hour when she was 64 years old. Go Betty. Paula Burns is the very first woman to win the SCTA National Championship. She not only beat all the boys, she beat everybody and was the top points champion. The first time, I think it was 2004 or 5, and that's ever since they started in 1938. All right. Oh, did that happen the right way? Hold on. Yeah, it is. Okay. Remember I told you it's a test? I've been having battery problems. Courage, calculations, good sense is what every Landspeed racer that sets a record has. But even then, sometimes if you make a mistake, you can burn a bank account to the ground as well as break your car and then get to think about it in a hospital bed. This is what happened with Chris. And it was A-OK with her and her husband, and I show you this picture. So there is no grandstanding here because she said they need to know that. She had lost her focus and didn't do the exact run profile, what she was told, because she just felt so good, and she didn't pay attention to what was happening. And they had to cut her out of that thing. You see the roll cages cut off in this? They cut the car in 2 and rolled it out so they could get her out. And she spent the next 3 weeks in the hospital. She survived. Car did not. Oh, go back. Normally I have the laptop here, but we only have a very short HDMI cable, so I'm trying to make the signal go through steel. All right. A lot of these women who have set these records, they not only build their car, as this gal Miriam did, they drive the car, they maintain the car, but then they have a little extra time. And here she is the assistant starter at Speed Week and all of the other events where she donates time to the others. And she knows just exactly when to send you off and what is safe. She is now retired from Landspeed Racing, and she is an FAA General Aviation Inspector. So if you have an airplane and you think you're going to pull one over on Miriam, try again. Let's go into the thrust-powered cars. And this is where I'm going to stop for a minute. I don't care if every one of you leave here tonight and can't remember any one of these names. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you understand that there isn't a car, truck, motorcycle, or even an airplane or a boat for that matter, that operates differently because it's a man or a woman. Good input, good response. Bad input, bad response. Paula had never driven a jet car in her life, but Andy Granatelli knew she could drive just about anything. So he decides that he's going to cut a deal with Walter, or his Art Arfons, to let her drive his drag racing car on Bonneville. She shows up, and it had rained the night before. You are looking at her going 225 miles an hour through 4 inches of water for more than 2 miles to satisfy what needed to be done for STP. She gets out of it, and she had to go. It was the first time she'd ever been in a jet, first time in that car, and she performed beautifully. Not only did she go in the straight line, she stayed in the straight line, and the only thing is that the parachutes were really full of salty water at the end of it. Now, when that happened, remember the back and forth between Janazzi and Count Labat? Oh, yeah. Goodyear would have nothing. They were upset because Paula was on Firestones, and they said, Craig, put your wife in the car. And then Goodyear and Shell went up to Walt Sheehan, the engineer, and poked him in the chest, he told me. I didn't ask him, he told me. He said, they told him both different times, you turn that motor down. We don't want that woman going anywhere near the speed of her husband. We don't want anyone to know that women can do this. He said, otherwise you're going to lose your sponsorship. So he cranked it down, and he said to me, I'm telling you this, Louise, because as far as I was concerned, she was as good with that jet as anybody that drove a jet in those days. Top of the heap, Kitty O'Neill, another one that got knocked out of the seat, not because she wanted to, but because of a contractual thing, because the guy wanted to drive it, who ended up not driving it, but she didn't get to take the world record. If they'd have left her alone, it would have been this car after the Blue Flame that held the world land speed record. I think Kitty would have definitely done that. She was a good friend of mine. She's all deaf, I'm partially deaf. That 512 was a one-way or two-way average, and it's only a Guinness Book record because they wouldn't pay for the sanctioning. God bless her and keep her. And this is the whole reason I'm up here talking. When I did my first little book on Bonneville, I had this picture, and I sent it to Delvine Manning, who promotes the Bonneville Motorcycle Speed Trials. I said, I know most of them, but there's 3 ladies I don't know here. Can you tell me their names and how to spell them? She did, and she sent back to me, and she said, Louise, do you understand what you've taken here? Well, yeah, 20 gals on a bike, because there are a lot of women racing motorcycles, much more than cars. She said, no, no, no. Those 20 women have set more than 200 land speed records, just that group. It was then I knew I was asking the wrong question. Not how many drove, how many set records. And that's why we're here. And that's why I did the second book, because this is the photo that did it. I keep pointing at that, and I should point it at the machine, right? There we go. In 1971, Joy Houston and her husband, who were top AMA riders, not only in drag racing events, but road courses, they showed up at Bonneville because they wanted to answer the question that all the other land speed racers do. How fast will it go? They had their applications, they had their money. They took her husband's application, and when she handed him hers, he looked at it and he went, and he flung it, literally flung it back in her face and said, we don't let women drive here, ride here. And she was gracious. She went back and found the AMA guy that was the sanctioning body and said, let me understand this. I can race at any other AMA sanctioned event in North America, but I come here and I can't race under the AMA banner. And he went, oh, I hadn't thought about that. He didn't realize that it was a ban. He just thought no women showed up. That winter at the Congress that the AMA has, they said, what do you do wrong? What do you do bad? How can we fix it? They did an amendment to the rules. Any member of the AMA in good standing cannot be refused entry into an AMA-sanctioned event. That AMA steward went back to the SCTA board, but God bless him, he waited a few months. And about late May, early June, he said, oh, by the way, yes, we're all set, we'll be ready for August, but there is one change. We will be accepting women from the AMA. And, oh, no women, no. And he said, okay, we don't plan on changing your rules if you won't accept it. But the Congress voted, and I cannot turn them away. So if you tell me I have to, then I've been told that we are going to withdraw the sanction. The AMA will no longer do the safety, the TAC, the classifications, or the recording of the records. You can still do that, of course, but you'll have to have your own inspectors and your own people to look at that, because we cannot be involved if you won't allow our members to race. Well, the hot rod boys, they didn't know squat Jackson about motorcycles, and they were like, all right, and they did not want to lose the entry fees, because there were a lot of bikes back then. All the manufacturers, it was like Chevy versus Ford versus Chrysler. Oh my gosh, try Honda, this, that, oh my gosh. So they capitulated. And Joy Houston was the very first woman to ever race legally with the approval of the SCTA. This is the actual time slip. I went looking for this lady almost 50 years later. And when I finally found her up in Henderson, Nevada, and she said, you know, I don't know why I kept all this. I'm so glad to hear from you. Maybe you're the reason. Would you like to have the time slips and all the information? Sure enough. And this is signed by a gal who was the daughter of the chief starter, Bob Higbee. That's Joyce Dalton. Many of you know her as Joyce Jensen. And then this was all the detail, the first female, the first entrant, and she was started by Bob, and he was happy to do it, 350, and she set not one but two records at Bonneville the first time, and that kind of got it started, ladies and gentlemen. Up, eep, it. Now, this is one of our panelists. This is Marcia Holley. Well, not only did the boys lose their all racing, Don Vesco decided it was time that it stopped being a boys' club for the 200 mile an hour, and he let Marcia drive his motorcycle streamliner. And for those of you who are not aware, the motorcycle streamliner is probably the most difficult thing to drive at Bonneville, or even ride. She got into the 200 mile an hour club, and then a few years later, there was a lot of griping. Oh, it was a one-shot wonder. And she came back in 1985, drove the Vesco Streamliner to I think it's 272 miles an hour. Yeah, I'm getting the okay. At 272 miles an hour. Rush is here tonight. You can ask her about what happened. This is the fastest woman on two wheels at Bonneville, and quite frankly, any of the dry lakes. It's Valerie Thompson. That's her actually setting one of the top 300 mile an hour records. But there's a lot of other bicycle people. This, mom and daughter, remember the mom and daughter? Laura Clock, Erica Cobb, and Carly Cobb, mother and daughter, they not only set records, they set them all in the same year, and they're the only mother-daughter game I know in motorcycles that all have records that were all set in the same week. This is probably my favorite motorcycle gal in the book. When I found this out, I was stunned. Sandy Vetter said to her husband at their farm, you know, I'd like to go Bonneville racing. We ride these dirt bikes all over the fields. I'd like to take it out to Bonneville. So sure enough, the husband agreed. Off they went. She set 5 records, 5 #1 AMA plates, until she was 80 years old, quit at 80, not because she was tired, because she wanted to learn how to fly hot air balloons. I love Sandy. Jalika Sengurtigan, I can't help, Sengurtigan, I believe it is. Okay, yes, Sengurtigan. She is not a rider at Bonneville. She is the crew chief of these vintage bikes that she and her husband Elp build. In this case, he rides this one. He cannot start this bike unless she gives him the permission. She is also responsible for the entire preparation of the bike, the testing of the bike, and the dynoing of the engines. But when she's not the crew chief, she has her own fun out in the dirt. Stacy B. London. This girl, she reverse engineers anything that she wants to know about the bike that she wants to put on her bike and go racing with. She is known for this. It's kind of like, you know, you take away, in the years ago they used to kid, oh, I took apart my mom's washing machine, or I took apart the dryer or whatever. That's what she does. Many records. And this, everybody calls me crazy, but I think this is nuts. Trains and bicycles used to race. And it's a thing, just like Landspeed racing. Denise, when one of her partners set the world record, the fastest bicycle, she wanted to take it away from him. And they created a bicycle that she could ride behind this wind tunnel. That's it to the side. This is her behind it. And just like cars that push off the starting line at Bonneville, they also hold on for the first 100 miles, and then they let go, but she's got to pedal from essentially 100 miles an hour to 183. Now, if she goes outside of that window, it would knock her over and break a whole bunch of bones right away. But it didn't happen, and she is now the fastest, not only fastest woman, she's the fastest bicycle rider on the planet. Jill Iverson, she has fun on her bike, a naked kind of bike, but she also devotes a lot of time as a starter, and I believe now she's also doing some of the publications. Is that right, Judy? Yeah, okay. Here she's telling him, hold on, the starter and the timer, the chief timer, they control the races, and whatever they say goes. Same here for Julie Berkdahl. There she is, she's about to drive the family streamliner. Several years later, with a few kids and her husband, she's now the chief timer, and she is in charge of the entire Utah Salt Flats Racing Association World of Speed and their test and tune. And when she says it's closed, everybody stops. No one will argue with her, but essentially she controls the meet, just like the chief timer at any of the other events. And I walk the talk. I helped the Vescos back in 2000, 1999, 2000, 2001. And in 2001, Don Vesco behind the wheel, we set the world land speed record for wheel-driven cars at 458. That's 24 years ago. Will one of you younger ones please come up with a great plan and come and kick our butt? Please? Because if Don was still with us, he'd be the first one to tell you, come on, what are you doing? I was never more surprised, but that came in the mail, and Rick and Don, I said, but I didn't do it. He said, no, you were part of the team. Everybody on the team. You can't do this by yourself. That's something you need to understand about land speed racing. No one has ever set a record by themselves. It takes a team. And so when they set that record, they decided that everybody needed to have them. And they got one of those from the FIA, all signed, sealed, and delivered, especially with the little ribbon and the seal, and it's on my wall still. So that's about the fast women. I'm about to just say goodbye now, and this is all extemporaneously. I've never done this like this before, especially standing out here and not seeing one note. This was the first book right there. Out of that came this book, because the publishers at Arcadia said, we didn't know women did this. Gee, if there were a few more, we could do a book. I said, there are, I will, and I did. Afterwards, if you'd like to get a copy, I've got them over there. I've only got a few left. But now I think I'd like to ask all of the panel members to come up, because this is where I would usually ask for questions. But hang on. I'd like you to ask them to the experts. Come on, Tanis, Marcia, Steve, Al, Donnie, Dave, Eddie. Oh, we got, and Danny, there you go, Seth, okay. So I'll wait till everybody gets settled. And it may be that you might want to talk to Marcia, or you might want to talk to Al Teague, or you might want to talk so on and so forth. But you can ask anything you want. So let me introduce you. Starting here, Tanis Hammond. Remember that first picture on the road to a share? That was Tanis in the skull cap and goggles leaning there. She's been to the birthplace of speed. Next to her is Marcia Holley. Remember? broke through the boys club with the red hat. First gal, and then came back in 1985, 272. Go, girl, go. This one, this Dave Davidson character here, he took a thing called a roadster, which I call an aerodynamic brick. And he was the first one to make it go 300 miles an hour. Hoo-yah! And I'm not even a Marine. The guy there with the red hat, he's earned his dues, but he's now driving Dave's roadster, and they're going to try and get him over 300 miles an hour this year. Say a prayer to the God you believe in. Steve Watt. Whoa, Steve Watt, he's involved with a little thing called the Speed Demon. That thing has earned the top time trophy more than anybody else. And I think the former driver, the one that put this all together, the late George Poteet, has probably run in excess of 400 miles an hour, more than any other single racer. But it's because it's what he loved to do, not because he wanted to outdo anybody. This was his own brand of fun. Next to him, Al Teague. Remember I told you about this roadster? This one, many people think he did just the Streamliner. Oh no, not this one. This one was the first guy when he was driving his roadster to be the first over 220, 230, 240, 250. And then he had a few 260s, and he thought, well, wait a minute, I'm driving somebody else's. And it was that when he realized maybe he had enough seat time, maybe he knew what he was doing, and he decided it was time for his heart's desire. And he needed to start to build the cars that he was going to drive, not just drive somebody else's. And he built a Lakester that then turned into a Streamliner. It just happened to be the world record for a long, long time. Next to him, Eddie B. Remember the 444 car, the yellow Streamliner? Well, that one, he's Mr. Electric. And the Vesco 444 car is now the fastest electric vehicle on Earth at 353. Drink our bathwater, Elon Musk. Seth Hammond, blue hat. He got that blue hat after she got her blue hat, and he cried about it because he still had the red hat and said, you know, my wife and I can't do our laundry together anymore. So he had to go get the blue hat. And the guy in the end, well, Danny Thompson, he took his dad's old hot rod, refurbished it, and he's set a 448 mile an hour record with, how old was that car? 50 years old, and he repurposed that. Now that's paying homage to somebody you love. And I have a wonderful picture where his mom, Judy, is leaning over, 50-some years later, kissing the tail of the car that he drove. She's watching her little boy set this world record. So that's our panel. Every one of these people have set a record up there. So I want to open it up. Oh, wait. Oh, Judy. I'm sorry. It's my first time doing this. I'm a virgin too. Judy Seitz. Judy Seitz is known as the Knittin' Racer. You can go 300 in a roadster, but she just likes to have fun. A car that her husband, son, they built, the Roadster. And while she was waiting in line, she would knit all the time. But she's also known as the bag lady because when you would show up, before you can go to the starting line, remember I said you have to pass tech, safety? Well, she would be the one that would come and say, excuse me, you got your paperwork done? Let me see it. And she'd see it. If you didn't have it done, back of the line. Okay, all right, let's have faint. And she would do the preliminary tests. Is that about right? Okay, so she was known as the bag lady. Her husband, Bob, the late Bob Seitz, let's just say that he could entertain you. And one of the ways he entertained all of us, one year he showed up, and I'm not kidding you, with screaming fluorescent green hair. And when somebody would mark, he'd say, what are you laughing at? Huh. He was something else. She has set a number of records, but that's more for fun. This was more for speed. And for Al, it ended up being fun, but it was also seat time, because in his heart was this dream of 400 that he would say to no one until he proved what he thought he could do was going to work. So that's our panel. I will open up for questions. So anybody Does anybody want to ask anything? Yes, ma'am.
How long does a qualifying license last?
So the question is, I don't know who wants to take that. How long does a qualifying license?
When you qualify for your speed, you have to go, when you go to the salt, they want to trust you, you have to qualify.
Oh, you mean to earn your driver's license? Okay. Who wants to talk about how to get a driver's license? Donnie Cummins. Oh, yeah, push the button.
All right, is that better? Okay, so you're right, the licenses do expire. So as long as you're in competition, the license stays active. The moment you stop competition, you get 3 years and then you're degraded 1 license. License are speed increments. So you got a license at 150, 175, 200, 250, and once you pass 300, you're limited. So as long as you're active, you keep your license, and then basically you're out of it for 3 years, you drop down 1 license.
How did you qualify for yours? What did you go through?
Well, I did it in an injected nitro roadster. Started off, did the same thing that everyone else had to do, go 150, 175, 200, so forth and so on.
And that's pretty much the same. That's pretty basic. Again, they want to know that you know where you're going. They want to know that you can listen, and they want to know that you know how to control the car. All right. Anybody else want to? I think we've got that one covered. Who's next? Yes, Dean.
Tires. Seems to be there. You all know how to make a lot of horsepower. How do you deal with the tires at those increasing speeds?
So the question, sorry. The question is about tires and how do you deal with increasing speeds and how do you know which tire to work? Okay, Mr. Watt, pick her up.
Yeah, well, tires, depending on the speed you go, have different characteristics. So on a car that we run, it's over 400, probably 450, 480. We have our tires spun on a machine by Rex Savoda in Montana up to 550 miles an hour. So if you can imagine a tire stretching from, say, 96-inch circumference, sitting on the starting line, to over 102 inches at the 5 mile going 470. So all the clearances, everything on your car has to be related to what's going to happen at that speed. So
And what do you fill them with?
nitrogen.
Why?
Because the heat, it doesn't get hot and it doesn't expand. And most of our stuff, we're up 100 pounds in the rear tires and about 125 in the front tires.
Imagine doing that at the gas station. Anybody else want to talk about tires?
Yeah, I'll also add we go through them almost every run. I don't know about you guys, but it gets very expensive. A set of tires lasts about 5 miles for us. We actually got 10 miles out of our electric car, but they didn't look good after a second run. So the salt, as it looks nice and flat, it's extremely abrasive. And you're basically burning out the entire time. So we have our record tire up on the wall. It did 10 miles and it's shredded to pieces. So there's very little left. And thank you for letting us borrow some tires last time.
Most of the land speed racers have stories like that. Al, you want to talk about what you would do with those racing tires to get to 400? Get fast 400?
Well, in about 1972, Firestone stopped making tires for land speed racing. So for a while we could run with what we had, but in the 80s and going into the 90s, tires got very, very scarce. Mickey Thompson now, tire company, started making them, but somehow they were either too thick or they would bubble or this or that. But myself, I always liked to run the old Firestones. So I had to sometimes scrounge around and get some 50-year-old tires to wear. And like I would get maybe one run, the second run, the cords would start showing. So we would clip them off, just like a lot of people do.
Just clip it and keep it running.
And well, I'll tell you a little quick story on that. We did that at first, and then I kept doing it, and I knew there were 8 plies on a tire. So I went down, I clipped them after the second, the third ply, the fourth ply, and I said, well, that's probably enough, so I didn't think any more of it. So I finished and we went home and everything. And it dismounted the tire and it just kind of collapsed. Now, these tires are tires, even with no air in them, they'll almost hold the car up. The old Firestones were that way. So I said to myself, I'm not going to do that again. So I just, from that time on, I just limited it to 2 cords. And after 2 cords, I'd take the tires off and put a new set if I had them. That's it.
Dave, Donnie, you want to talk about the tires on the Roadster at 300?
Tires on the Roadster at 300.
What was the question again?
When you did your 300-mile-an-hour runs, you were growing up to that, what did you have to do different about the tires? Was there anything special? What effort and thought did you put into the tires? Not just the engine.
Well, first of all, it was a real humble feeling to do the speeds that I did, and then I couldn't have done it if it wouldn't have been for guys like Donnie and my engine builder and the whole crew. But when we went out there that particular time, we had a vibration in the car. And I'd never gone 280 miles an hour in a Roadster before. So I wasn't sure. And we qualified. And then John said, well, let's go on to impound. I told John, I says, no, we're here to try to go over 300. And so we had a cut tire. So we changed the tire and the rim. And I just thought it was the nature of the beast, and I talked to Al about Roadsters a little bit. And he says, well, they vibrate and they do all kinds of things, So anyway, we changed the tire and we went out, and the next pass we went 297. And we went into impound. And on that run, it was we were all in it at about 2.5. I wasn't picking up any speed.
So essentially, you were against the wall for the next couple of miles. There was no more acceleration. You were just standing on it.
Yeah, basically, we weren't there yet on the tune-up. Every run we were learning. So we went down through there. It kind of laid over before the finish line. We never took it to the full 5 mile. We didn't have enough fuel. So we just took it to the 3 mile marker. So.
When did you find out you were going 300? And what did you think of first, the tires, the engine, or were you just grateful to get there?
Well, when we came out of impound and everything was fine, and they looked on the computer and they said, we weren't picking up any speed. I said, well, let's put some more nitro in it, give it some more power, So anyway, we went down the next pass at 304, which put us over the 300-mile-an-hour mark. And, it was a ride. I was happy to see the 3 mile mark. Because in a Roadster, they're known to move around, and you bet you get there quick, so you can get it over. And the problem with us at that time, we didn't have the fuel capabilities to go more than 3 miles, and we were using little more than 30 gallons of fuel.
30 gallons for one run.
Yeah.
Okay. Check that one off.
So, now we can, we have the capabilities to go 4 miles, but, we still haven't tried to do that.
Okay.
So.
Danny, you took your daddy's car, repurposed it. you had to think about tires. What were your nights laying awake doing about the tires?
Well, tires, well, first off, running a Mickey Thompson tire, so you had pressure right there. You had to perform for the old man. So, but like Steve said earlier, I mean, spinning the tires when you're going 400 miles an hour, it becomes so important, because if you ever go to the tire spinner, Rex, and you watch the tires spin, when you look at them up to about 300 miles an hour, they're ugly. I mean, they're moving around and they're moving around, and you're thinking, I'm going to try to go 400 mile an hour in a tire like that without spinning it. It's crazy. So you watch the tire about 300 miles an hour, the thing starts to get happy. It's kind of like it almost stress leaves itself. And then you resize all the tires, because you size them all first, so that you could try to make all the tires be the same size on the drive wheels. And we have 4 drive wheels because it's a 4-wheel drive car. And anyway, that is, Steve does it. I don't know how many other people do it, but it's critical if you're trying to go 400 plus miles an hour.
I'm making the business of tires because it's not something I think anybody in the audience would think of. And to go those speeds, this is part of it. Think about what they're doing. It's a little tiny contact patch, maybe about this big or so. 4 of them. That's the only thing holding you on God's green, or in this case, white earth. So that's something, to be able to control that thing. But your life depends on that little inflated tire spinning around like a crazy thing. Anyway, so how about somebody else?
Hey, Louise,
Oh,
let me just.
okay. Seth Hammond, take it away.
I just want to add to Al's story, because it kind of was the same with us too. Back in the day when we were running the Firestones, I asked my son Channing if he wanted to drive the car. And he said, oh, yeah, it sounded like a good idea. This was 2006, I think it was, maybe 2004. I don't remember. But anyway, we got up there and we get him in the car and we're getting him licensed and everything. Finally, we get him ready to go out there and make a good, fast pass. And he's all suited up in the car and we're at the starting line. And I go into the toolbox and get a pair of scissors. And while he's sitting there, and he can see the tires right out of the side of the car. And I'm over there trimming the tires. He said, what are you doing, Dad? So I'm just giving
With his son.
Yeah, I'm just giving the tires a haircut. He goes, oh, gee. And he just got this look like, oh my God. And I didn't think anything of it, because I was used to trimming them for myself. And I didn't think he was going to think of it, but it kind of scared the heck out of the kid.
Did you go have a father-son moment there?
No, it was just get after it, And so we did it, but it was just exactly what Al said, is you just keep giving those things a haircut. And that's what we did.
I'll have you know that Seth Hammond is also known as the benevolent dictator. So that's probably why Channing didn't talk back.
Real
Al?
quick, Louise, on that, on trimming the tires. If you don't trim them after a run, they'll come out, if you trim them, well, the centrifugal force takes the rest of the cord and takes it right down to the rim. Now, when that happens, you have actually you have a weed eater blade, and it cuts into the fiberglass body, it cuts into everything.
Yeah.
So just something, to think of.
Yeah, you don't really have to think about your tires going home tonight. That's not in the mix. But when you're going for the speeds that these people are trying for, those things are commonplace.
One of the things about Landspeed tires is actually the sidewalls, the strength of the tire. So that's the last thing you want to do is lose the cord on the side of it, because now you're losing support of the tire. Danny was mentioning earlier on the spin fixture, it gets ugly when the tire's transforming, doing a transition. That's part of the reason why we're running 100 PSI in these tires, to try to keep the tire more true at form. Otherwise, it kind of gets out of shape and kind of gets nasty.
Yeah, and I think I'll add in, when we did the world record stuff with the jets, there is subsonic. We're all living in subsonic. And then there's supersonic, the airplanes. But that thing in the middle is called transonic. And what those tires would do, the trick for the jets and the rockets when we were doing that, was to make the transonic envelope as small as possible, because that's where almighty hell breaks loose with the car. Everything that could be a little bit wrong gets exceedingly wrong. And then it all just goes, and it's fine. It's wonderful. So the tires make a big difference on how quickly you can get through this transonic range. All right, we were next.
So for the ladies on the panel, what was it that inspired you to start racing?
All right, for all the women on the panel. So Judy, Marcia, Janice, take it away. How about start? For all the women, right? What inspired them? What inspired you to drive? Why did you want to drive a race car?
I wanted it because I love to drive, and it was a family operation, and husband and wife, partner and his wife. So we all got to drive. And once you get that bug, you get that salt under your fingernails, you ain't gonna quit.
Marcia.
I was actually,
Yeah, just hold it a little closer.
I was actually a dirt bike. I raced motocross, I raced Baja, and I did photography, and Kawasaki sent me to Bonneville Salt Flats. I think it was private time to shoot Don Vesco in the Streamliner. And they're going, well, how fast is a woman gone? And I said, I don't know. This isn't my kind of racing. I don't do this. And so the Bellray people, it was a dare. So they dared me, and they put me on a drag bike, and I ended up going 202 and putting a hole in the piston. So I couldn't get a two-way average. So came back speed week with a plan. And it took quite a few days to learn to drive the Streamliner, and a few wobbles. And
Motorcycle
this and that.
Streamliner.
Yeah, 2 wheels. And that's where I set the record and was the first woman in the 200-mile-an-hour club. And I think it was just a plan from Don Vesco to let me do that. And there were some guys were real supportive and some weren't. But that's 1978.
And you enjoyed it, right?
Pardon?
You enjoyed it, didn't you?
I enjoyed it. Yeah. And it was kind of a lot easier. And 7 years later, when Rick said, "Do you want to drive the 444 car?" And that was like a piece of cake. And so,
The Streamliner, that one had 4
compared to
wheels.
2
You
wheels.
don't understand what she drove. Motorcycle Streamliners, they are the wobbly, flobbly fish. When you see them start, this is how they start. How would you like to go 300 miles an hour starting out with that? Right?
Yeah, and you're pulled or pushed like 100 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah.
Till you hit the first gears are geared like at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. Now, this lady had 4 wheels, but she'll tell you about it. Tanis Hammond.
Well, I just have to tell you all that Marcia's been such an inspiration for me since the very beginning, because it was easy for me to get in the 2 club. I don't mean easy in the sense of creating the speed, but I didn't have to fight any of the restrictions. And like Marcia said, some people agreed and some people didn't, but you know, I stay in my own lane. What they think of me is none of my business. So yeah, my opportunity came when Seth, when it let one of the crew guys. Well, in the early days of Bonneville, nobody let anybody else drive. I mean, you were the owner, you were the driver, that was it. So Seth let one of the drivers drive, one of the crew guys, and I'm looking at this guy thinking, he never even raced go-karts. Well, I can do that. So I went, and luckily and thankfully, they gave me that first opportunity. But it is truly what Judy says for anybody. Once you do this, you have a really hard time stopping, because you just want to go faster, just faster. If I could, just give me one more run, just give me more nitro, just give me, anything. And I just want to go faster. And it's crazy when you think about it, but it is so much fun. And I just want to add something to this tire thing. Well, I watched Seth out there one time with this marking pen and marking the marks on the tire. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "It's so we can get through tech." And always the thing is, you're okay driving, right? Yeah, I guess, But anyway, yeah, it's like nothing you've ever done in your life. And every once in a while on the freeway, I'll see somebody just flying, but they got it under control. Now, I know that sounds stupid because anybody can change, right? Any situation. But it just looks like so much fun. And then other times you see people doing stupid things because they have absolutely no idea how the car is going to handle. That's the people that I think are scary out there. But anyway, I encourage you all to at least go to Bonneville and get bit by the bug because it's so much fun.
And this lady, when I asked her about that basic question, one of the things she said to me, you know, you were either in the car thinking about it or waiting to get picked up at the end, and you said, what am I doing? I have 2 small children at home, and I'm racing a car? And she went, yeah, they'll be all right. And I remember you telling me that, but it was like, okay, because you trusted the car, you felt the car, and you knew who built the car, and you kind of figured that he wanted to keep you in one piece. So that's part of it. It's something that, you know, why do you climb the mountain? Why did they go to the moon? Why did Neil get out of the capsule and go stomp on the ground, you know, that moon? Why did they do it? Because that's that process. And again, that's genderless. How many out there could somebody make you do the thing that you love to do the most? Could they make you do that? No, not at all. That's something you do all on your own. And that's part of why you do it. It's a great amount of fun. So, okay, we had another, did that answer your question? All right. Yes, sir.
Why and how is your steering assembly set up?
So the question from Theodore, the recently graduated engineer, or are you still in school? Just graduate. The new engineering graduate would like to know the steering setups. Why and how? Who wants to start? These are wonderful. How about for the rather front wheels that you might have put on your car, Mr. Teague, or whoever wants to take it away, Al?
Good question. What I did when it was a Lakester, it was fairly simple because I could put the steering gear out of an automobile up front, and I could just run it like an automobile. I could run the drag link to one side, and then the tie rod to the other. And they would steer it. So anyway, in 1982, I decided to make a streamliner out of this, and the front end was really narrow, and I could bring the tires in and maybe get a kingpin in there, and they're real close, but I wouldn't have any turning radius. So I looked at a crane once, and they had several tires in a row in the front, and when you just one pitman arm and this and that, and then when you turn, they all kind of turn the same way. So I figured if I took the tires and put them side by side and then rolled them back and then steered them that way. Well, I said, that'll work, because then I could run it like a Ford A-arm. I could run the one off one side and the tire, and then the axle off the other side. And they're independent axles, but still they're pivoting off the frame, and they're pivoting up and down. And I put some radius rods on there. I did that. And that worked real good. And I kept figuring at night, now how am I going to get, I took that same steering box I had and I put it in the middle of the tires. And I ran just one deal, one tire went forward, and the other deal on the pitman arm came straight across, came back to the other tire. So when I turned it, they both turned together. So that worked out really great for me. As far as aligning them and everything, I could just put a line down the center and get a line of the car, and then measure from the rear of the tire to the line and the front of the tire, and try to get a little toe into them. And it worked, because we're just going in a straight line. Everybody said, well, what's your radius when you turn out? We don't turn out that, we do turn out, but it's salt, and it's, it just doesn't wear. So it might not have been correct, but it worked for me.
And it was the first time that happened, that was the stagger setup. Now, Steve, you're putting together a whole new Speed Demon. Why don't you answer this new engineer's questions for him? Why and how?
the first two Speed Demons were very similar to Al's. So basically, the front tire was the right front, the back tire was the left front, and it had a steering box behind them with a pivot arm that went like this, one on either side. So they would turn the same. So you treated them individually like that. And that was because the car had a super narrow nose, but it had super wide hips. So the Speed Demon was actually not the best aerodynamic car for what we're doing. So as time goes on, as of the last few months, we got a car from Jim Knapp that the body style is way better than ours. And we were putting both Speed Demons will be in the museum in Nebraska. So 5 weeks ago, I started on this car, and I actually put the steering box in it yesterday. So it happens to be a rack and pinion steering that we mount to the axle and put the tie rods out so there's no bump steer, and we can just steer it through the center. So we can set toe in at whatever, and it's going to stay that way for the whole length of the run. So
What kind of speed do you think that new car is going to be able to attain?
I don't know. I'd get down the track once at least and look at data, but I imagine that car. So if our gold car took, say, 1,200 horsepower to go 400 miles an hour, this car is probably around 1,000 horsepower to go 400. So the aero on it's that much better. So it's wide. It's got a bigger nose and it slims down all the way to the back, so that it's got way less drag than our car does. So
When they staggered the Speed Demon wheels, did you get that idea from Mr. Teague, or how did you come up with that?
actually, Rich Mansion did it for Ron Main probably when was that, 2006?
In a former car?
Yeah, Echo Fire. So the orange Speed Demon started out as a Lakester. Actually, it started out as a 1991 Meyer Dragster. When I was restoring it for George after we crashed it, there was a chassis tag on it, and it was a Meyer, 1991 Meyer. So I think it was a rear-engine dragster that got hacked and whacked. And I whacked on it for 4 or 5 years, and the guy before me whacked on it for probably 7 or 8 years. So by the time the orange Speed Demon was done, it was just a Frankenstein.
Got it. Eddie, you probably, of all the people up there, you probably had the heaviest streamliner out there. Talk about the steering from that and tell the people the weight and why, what caused all that weight. You didn't have a heavy set driver, that wasn't it.
No, our driver's pretty skinny. Skinnier than I am. So we took the 1957 444 car that you guys keep hearing about all day today, and pardon me if I say this wrong, but that car's been through a lot. That car has a lot of history on it. I don't know if any car has more, but that car's been on the salt since 1957. Started with a Model B motor in it, and it's been rebuilt, gosh, I don't know how many times. The Viscos told me a ton. It's been stretched, lengthened. We actually cut it in half when we got it, which scared me a little bit because I knew that chassis was a certain way and the car ran a certain way, and by me cutting the thing in half to get batteries and motors in it, the car was not wide enough in the middle section, so what we had to do is basically remove all the chromoly tubing, widen everything out because I couldn't get my motors and batteries. We only had where the old V8 was. And the body panels, I wasn't going to change anything, so I had 4 months to get that car from the day it was delivered at my shop to it actually on the salt. So I forget what the original weight of that was, but we went up to 3,800 pounds. What do you guys at with the?
The original orange car was 5,800. The gold car was 4,130, and the new car is going to be less than 4,000.
Okay, so we're still not on the super heavy side, but for that class of car, we did add probably about 400 or 500 pounds to it. When we cut the car in half, we also put a lot of weight in one spot where the batteries were. We had 780 pounds of battery in there, over 1,200 cells. And what happened is when we put the car together, well, the belly hit the ground. We loaded the whole car up. And we kind of knew that this was going to happen, so we had a really good fabricator working for me from AVS Fabrication. Al is a younger guy, and he just really knows his stuff. So what he did is he actually built a brand new strut system that for the upper part of the roll cage, he put on giant 2-inch heims. So what we could do is once the car was loaded, we could actually pull the belly up off the ground with a triangulated roll cage that pulled the whole thing. So we pre-tension the roll cage with these giant heims and then pull up the center section of the car, which got the belly off the ground because we had all this additional weight sitting right in the middle of the vehicle. Going back to your steering question too, we ran a rack and pinion on that. I forgot how much camber we had in there, or caster we have in there, but caster is a big thing. You don't want to turn very quickly. You're going in a straight line. Plus, you don't want to get speed wobbles. Same goes for motorcycles. I think we're doing 16 degrees on the motorcycles. I'm not quite sure, but you definitely want to make sure it's raked out a little bit because you're not going to get the speed wobbles shakes. Plus, you're not parallel parking the thing. I took the car out, and I got busted for this. I took it out for a photo shoot after we did the salt run. And me being electric, I could just turn it on and quietly whiz away and no one will notice. Well, Kiwi Steve, he saw me do it, and man, he came after me like crazy. But
Kiwi Steve is one of the inspectors for the SCTA.
Oh,
he's kind of like the salt police.
Yeah, you don't mess with him. Luckily, our crew chief knew him very well. He's like, hey, how are the wife and kids, Steve? And I'm like trying to pretend I'm not driving this thing. So I made a hard right-hand turn to go get a photo shoot with it after we got the record. And it took me about 2 football fields to even get the thing at a 90-degree angle. So that's how little steering these vehicles have. I couldn't test it at our shop. There's no place to go test a streamliner that's an inch off the ground that has 0 steering. Can't take it around the building, can't take it around the street. So everything that we had to do is we actually pulled the thing off the trailer. Never left the trailer in 4 months. We test everything with forklifts by pulling everything up, running it. And since we cut everything apart, I was really scared that we screwed up the alignment of the vehicle because I wasn't going to touch that. We got to the salt. We did about 280 on our shakedown run, and the car was pulling the one direction. And this was what really tripped me out. And you're an engineer, so you could figure this out. I'm like, oh, great. We bent the frame. We did something. And Rick Vesco looked at me. He's like, oh, no big deal. We're going to just adjust the shocks. And I'm looking at him going, you're just going to adjust the shocks to fix a steering issue? He goes, yep. Well, they did a couple of adjustments from right to left, and the car ran true. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around. Now I kind of get it, but it took me a while to figure out they're adjusting steering just by suspension and coils. So there's so much more that goes into this stuff than just your rack and pinion and how your front wheels are aligned. The whole entire thing has to kind of work together. The rear talks to the front, the right talks to the left, and then the left front talks to the rear right. So you got all these mathematical equations going on. And to be in the presence of guys who've done this for so long, because I had no idea why the car was tracking wrong. I was in charge of making the powertrain. So there's a lot to the whole steering thing too.
Anyone else want to take that? Because what they're talking about is with these cars, especially the streamliners, it's like an 80-piece orchestra. They all have to start and stop when they're supposed to. They all have to play at a certain tone and timbre and pull back and go forward. And you can always tell when one of the horns or one of the strings, and especially the bassoon, does not do what they're supposed to. And when it happens on a car, it instantly transmits that to the driver, and they have to know the car to move that. I do believe, Eddie, that's the first explanation I've ever seen of putting a girdle on a streamliner to lift it out and get that tummy tuck in there. Was that a tummy tuck for the 444 car? The dragon belly, okay.
Louise,
That's it.
The very first Speed Demon car, when we got it done, did the same thing.
Same thing.
We couldn't get the body on. It was 5/8 of an inch shorter on the top. So I had a bunch of sprint cars, so we made two big long radius rods and spun them, because this was the night before we left for Bonneville. So we put 2 bungs on the car and made 2 big long radius rods and jacked it up and spread them out so the body went on.
So there you go. It's not something you experience on the street.
So now what we do is, like, before I go to Bonneville this year, I'll take the new car and we'll put it on the frame jig, and we'll put like a 3/8 spacer in the center and hold the ends down, and then weld the bars in the top so that it's pre-stressed so that it'll just sit flat.
I've never really had to think about that before, but yet all of what you say makes a lot of sense.
They're 30 feet long.
Yeah, okay. Not a semi, but, oh yeah, yes, sir. How about you?
So what are some of the things you do to mitigate lift of the car on flat?
So this gentleman wants to know, what do you do to keep this baby on the ground? All of yours on the ground, and also I would imagine not only on the ground, but tracking true. Take it away, somebody.
I learned this from the Vescos. So a lot of times you'll see like spoilers on cars. The F1 cars especially, they're trying to get a lot of downforce because you want more traction. In Bonneville, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you don't want either. You don't want a lot of downforce and you don't want a lot of upforce. Well, upforce is going to get you airborne and get you killed. Downforce is going to slow you down. You don't want a lot of drag. So with the Vesco cars, they try to hit like that middle ground of not having, it's basically flying as neutral as possible. If anything, a little bit of down. There you'll see a lot of wings on the streamliners too to keep them true and steady. So there's a lot of that kind of aero going on. But you have to take away like kind of what we thought like, oh, spoilers and pushing the thing into the ground. That doesn't work in Bonneville because it's going to work against you because exponentially, it's a factor of 4 for every 100 miles an hour of how much force you're going to hit. So you really want to mitigate your forces because it's like, okay, 100, let's just take round numbers. If 100 horsepower gets you to 100 miles an hour, you need 400 horsepower to get you to 2 and 16 to get you to 3 because you're pushing all that air out. And that's just that, true clean amounts. You start putting downforce in or anything else, you're going to have a whole bunch of different problems. And I don't know if that's what you ran into too with your fast car.
I prayed.
Now, Marcia, as far as talking about that with the streamliner, so, how did you do with the aerodynamics? How did you use that to your advantage? Or did you just keep praying too?
I just kept praying, and everything's like in slow motion too when you're going that fast. To me, it was. So.
Did you feel
I
every
didn't
little
feel-
kind of push? Did you have any crosswinds?
No, I don't remember any crosswinds. I remember when I rode the Jack Dolan's drag bike, I was down at the end and I thought, because I was tucked under the ferry, and I thought, I feel like I'm going pretty slow, and I peeked over and about ripped my head off because there's nothing to judge your speed by. We don't have speedometers.
Right.
I mean, not back in the 70s and 80s when I drove, we didn't. Maybe they do now. But yeah, and the cars, I leave that up to the experts on the downforce and just trust the mechanics and try to follow directions.
Was it easy to steer or hard to steer or new to steer?
It was new to steer. And like I said, everything I just remember doing everything. Don't react fast. You can't react to anything fast. It's like you go, okay, let's bring it back straight. Just real slow type of motion and stuff.
Gotcha.
And,
Okay. Yeah. All right. Does that answer your question?
Do you do anything to the pan or the floor of the vehicle to create some sort of suction?
So the question is, do you do anything to the bottom, to the pan underneath? Do you create some kind of suction under there?
So all of our cars are flat bottom cars. So we have a low pressure under the car. And what we do is we'll run skirts. So before we leave for Bonneville, I'll have a flat table and we'll set the car at ride height that it's going to run at. And we'll get the skirts as low as we possibly can. So in the wind tunnel, from a 1/2 inch to a 1/4 inch off the salt is probably about a 600 mile an hour gain with no drag penalty. And on our car, we have pipes that come out the back at probably a 41 to 45 degree angle. And there's probably about 800 to 1,000 pounds of downforce off the pipes when we're at about 3,500 horsepower. So we do have position sensors and strain gauges to know downforce on the wheels. So when we run, we'll run a softer run and get data so that we don't do nothing stupid.
Have you experienced any like bending of the frame or anything like that?
Follow-up question, do you get any bending of the frame or problems by doing that? You can talk about that, Steve. And Danny, I want you to answer this because you repurposed your dad's car. How many changes you had to make for that once Steve's done?
So what we do is we build the car to crash at 500 and backwards from there.
Okay, I don't think Detroit does that, but they have to. Danny.
Well, with my dad's car, it was designed in 1968 by Ford, and Ford's kind of skunk works at the time. So we took that car, we stretched it out another 36 inches. we changed the center of pressure from the center of gravity, and we separated those some more. So when the car does get sideways, it gives it some more stability in yaw, and it'll pull it back on. Then we added wings, and we added an under tray, and we really thought, you know, this is going to do it. And we went from acceleration rate of 0.032 with no wings to 0.038, which is not like a dragster or something where you're, or a Formula One car where you're pulling a lot of G's. But just the difference in that was a huge acceleration difference. But when the thing got to 375 miles an hour, it said, I'm done. I'm not going any faster. We created too much drag with that. So pulling that back down really helped a lot. So, you know, nobody said anything tonight, but just gives me goosebumps looking at this guy right here. Ed Eskandarian, 104 years old, sitting right here.
That's for you, Ed. That's all for you. That's all for you. So it's happy birthday, Ed.
What do you want me to do?
No. They're just recognizing you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Oh, hang on. Iski's got a question. Yes, sir.
I don't know if they ever had a car that scared them. They had too much power.
Okay. The Cam Father would like to know, and I'd like to know every one of you to answer this, so get ready. Have you ever had a car that scared you, and why?
Well, when we made our record run of, well, our two-way record was 448 miles an hour. On our return run at 430 miles an hour, a little bit of a crosswind, and the car went dead sideways at 430 miles an hour. Now, this car is only 36 inches wide, so it can trip over itself pretty easy when it gets sideways. It went sideways one way, it came back sideways the other way, and the smart thing to do as a driver is you always pull the parachute, because that separates the center of pressure from the center of gravity and gives it that stability you're looking for. But our driver wasn't very smart, and he off the throttle for a little bit and legged it on through, and the thing went 459 mile an hour out the door. So.
I think I'm sitting next to your driver, aren't I?
Huh? Anyway, so yeah. Did it scare me? You know what? I mean, I think if you're scared, you better stay at the house. You know, because then you're going to be thinking about that kind of stuff. So you got to concentrate so hard on what you're doing, and there's so many things to do. And I'll tell you one thing, when you get to the 5 mile an hour mark, you let the breath out. Thank God I got down here again. So it's big.
I think what Ed wants to know is that all of you up there, you tune for safety, but every now and again, that car might scare you, and that's what he wants to know. Did a car ever scare you, and what'd you do?
I think following up what he said, I said, when you get in the car, when you leave the starting line, you're not thinking about being scared. You shouldn't be in the car. So in 2002, I finally set, after Tanis, I set a 303 mile an hour record in the morning, and we had a single engine with a turbo on it, made pretty good power. So we went back, we're all patting ourselves on the back, and we all said, well, what are we going to do? I said, well, we're going to add more boost. We're going to go out there and we're going to have a fun run, and we're just going to see what happens, just see how fast this thing goes. So we add a little bit more boost, and of course we go back out there, and I jump in the car, and I'm thinking, man, I'm in the 300 mile an hour club. Life doesn't get any better. My wife's going to do my T-shirt in the same roll of laundry that her T-shirt's in. Life's good. So we leave the starting line. I leave the starting line, and I'm just getting with the program, and I get to about the 4 mile mark, and I think, man, this thing is just getting with it. And I'm about 4.5 miles, and I said, man, it's just going faster than I ever. No, that's the last thing I remember. Until about an hour and 45 minutes later, I woke up in the hospital in Salt Lake City with Tanis looking at me. And she realized by this time I was going to be okay. They'd done tests and things. They had to get me 2 ambulances and a helicopter to get to Salt Lake City. And she said, well, you wrecked a perfectly good race car. So there's not much pity at our house. I think both of my son, my daughter, and Tanis, of course, we all just jumped in that car and did what we had to do. And Tegan, our daughter, actually did the best. She went up there, never been to Bonneville before in her life. At the end of the week, she had set a record of 294 miles an hour. And so she went back to her home in Hawaii and talking. She was going out with a guy in the movies, a Key Grip, and they're all sitting around there talking about being a stunt driver. And she said, well, I'll go to stunt driving school with her. So the next year she goes back to Bonneville, sets a 302 mile an hour record, and ends up at the stunt driver's school out there at Willow Springs. And they got to like her. They said, oh, come on, Bonneville, step on it. They were teaching her how to be a stunt driver. She turned her career as a novice Bonneville driver, and she's now a professional stunt driver and makes her living being a stunt driver. So that's.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw in there, you ever watch Magnum PI? It ain't no boy driving, it's his little girl.
Yeah, and then of course Channing, our son, who designed the car that we have, the last car that's now in the museum at Lincoln, is working for Steve. So I got 2 kids that have made their lives out of my hobby. I think that's pretty good. Anyway, thank you.
Eddie, you didn't drive it, but that car ever scare you? Maybe the heat?
Yeah, actually, I wasn't the driver. Eric Ritter was, but I was absolutely terrified because I designed that thing. I designed everything inside of it, all the batteries, and basically everything that was going to hopefully not kill that person. A lot goes through your head when you're especially experimenting. We're electric car guys. No one's really done that besides Ohio State out there. So especially when we're going through tech, the guys are looking at me going, what is all this stuff? You know, where's this fire suppression? Where's that? Well, we don't need it. We don't have any fuel on board, but we do have batteries. Batteries are extremely heavy. They could come out and they don't explode. That's kind of a myth, but they do burn. And once they do catch on fire, they don't stop until they're done burning. Tech guys looked at me and say, what happens if you do catch on fire? I said, tow the thing as far away as you possibly can and watch the fireworks. So yeah, it is terrifying, especially when you're building cars. And Steve, I don't know if you could kind of add to that, but we're builders. We're the guys that sit there and we're responsible at the very end to make sure this thing is working correctly. Especially me being a kind of new to Bonneville with electric stuff, everyone's watching me. If I'm going to crash a car, if these guys crash a car, it's just basically, that's daily operations out there. If I crash a car, or one of my guys crashes a car and it's electric, not only do I look like crap for the rest of my life, but now I'm the stupid electric guy. I put a blemish on the entire industry. So yeah, it is terrifying, especially when you got other people's lives in your hands and you know that if you make a mistake, we didn't finish that car till the night before we got to Bonneville. And the whole drive out, I mean, I'm just going through so much in my head of, did we tighten every bolt? Did I run every electrical cord right? What's going to happen during tech inspection? What if he crashes? Are those batteries going to come out and say hello? So yeah, I mean, I'd be stupid to tell you that I was more terrified than Eric. Eric Ritter, our driver, looked at me. He's like, "Are we good?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think so." And he goes, "Cool." Got in. Never even was concerned a single time. I'm sweating bullets the entire time. So.
Well, that's a good driver. Judy, what scared you more, the Roadster or Bob's green hair?
I do have.
Did you get scared in the Roadster?
Did I get scared?
Did you get scared in the Roadster? What happened? Is it on?
Oh, it's up. Yes. At one point, I don't know, I know I was the first one to go over 100 in that Roadster, thanks to my smallness, I should say. But I can recall at one point that I got all the way through. This was at El Mirage, and 120 maybe. And then as I finished, I started to turn, and it's on such a short wheelbase, I started to spin. And
this was after you'd gone through the lights?
Well, that was my first question when Lee Kennedy came up to me and said, "Are you okay? Did I get my time?" That was the only thing I was concerned about.
You didn't get scared, you didn't care for yourself. You just wanted to know if you got that time slip.
That was what I wanted. That was, yeah, I was fine.
You understand Landspeed racers.
And if you'll wait a minute, I'll try and get this shirt off and show you my husband.
Oh yeah, well that's worth it. Al, so while she's doing that, you think about the first time the car scared you. That's Bob. Yo, Bobby Seitz. You thought I was kidding you about that hair. Oh, no. All right, Al, tell us when you got scared.
Well, I'm scared just listening to all this stuff. Well, anyway, it was probably about 18 or 19, maybe, yeah, about that. And my brother and I had a drag roadster that we used to take to the different drag strips. He would drive it. And one night he wanted to go to the river and with his buddies, and I wanted to go drag racing. So I said, the heck with it. I'm half owner of it. So I got my dad. We loaded the car, got it in the trailer, took it out to Colton drag strip, and I got it fired up. It had a GMC 6-cylinder in it, and it had a special 12-port head on it, but it ran about 120 at the drags in about mid-11s. So I got up there, put the helmet on, and the safety was really lax back then because, you kind of run what you brung. So I got up on the starting line and brought the engine arms up and let the clutch out. And man, that thing was shaking, vibrating. This old Roadster had a tarp on it, and it was just going every which way. It scared me silly on that one. So anyway, but you don't want to admit that. You got to come back and do it again, and do it again. And by the time probably 6 runs later, there was nothing to it. But that's racing or whatever. The liner came around once, it was going 300 plus, but luckily it didn't go over and it corrected and whatever. So, but what it does, what you do when you race Bonneville or something, everything slows down, your adrenaline picks up. So you're running, but yet it's like it's slow motion. I know I went by the 5 mile on the record run, and the car was, it was timed at 4:32 there. And I wanted to make sure I was in the right mile because there's one thing you don't want to do at Bonneville is shut off too early and think you're in the other mile. They'll never let you live it down. So anyway, I could have seen a fly on that 5 mile poster at that speed. So that's it.
But my other question was that you raced, you had told me a couple of times that you could afford a wife or you could afford a car, but you couldn't afford both because they both took too much time and too much money. So to add on to the question from Mr. Iskandarian, were you afraid when you proposed to Jane?
No, she went to Bonneville about 2 or 3 years before that, and it was a good deal. I was 48 years old, so I was figuring you got to do something. Like they say, you either got to get off the pot. And I had to get off.
I'm sorry, we were talking about fear. I just thought I'd throw that in there.
No, she's been a great gal.
All right.
I can't complain.
How about you, Steve? Because Steve's not only a builder, but he has also driven. You're also in the 2 Club.
Yes.
So when did you get scared? Please tell Mr. Iskandarian what scares you or scared you.
So I did one year, we were there on the World Finals, and we had run that year with the Speed Demon, and Chris Rasky went to get in Wayne Jessel's truck and get his record. So we were going to go spend the weekend at Park City after that. And what happened was it was Wednesday and the meet was not over till Friday. So I was standing there and Wayne says, hey, go do a bailout. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, you need to go do a bailout. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, you're going to drive this truck. I said, okay. My wife looks at me like, you had this planned, didn't you? I said, no, I have no, I knew. So it was noon. We ran the truck, did all my licenses. I was an impound at 198 by 430. And the number 2 piston wasn't hooked to the rod no more. So we had to shut her down. So the next year at Speed Week, we're running the Speed Demon with George. We're done. Thursday, we're done, just waiting. And Wayne says, hey, I just run a record. I took the rocker arm off. I'm going to turn this D motor into E motor, make it a 7-cylinder. You need to go get your record.
Oh, I got to stop you a second. For those of you who said the D motor, E motor, a double A is the highest horsepower. As you go through the alphabet, the cubic inch displacement of the engine goes down. So that's what he was talking about.
So I go down there and we run and we go 240 something with a 7-cylinder. So I'm in impound at a 215 record. So we get up in the morning, we go back, and I'm walking over to the truck, and George Poteet comes over and says, hey, are you nervous? I'm like, what do you call nervous, George? He's like, well, you're going to go run truck at 240 miles an hour. I said, yeah. I said, what do you think I feel like when I'm down at the 5 mile waiting you to come at me at 500 miles an hour and not know if every bolt's tight or whatever? I mean, you've been over 460 times that I've waited for you to come down there. That makes me nervous.
Whoa, okay. Yeah, much like what Eddie was saying, when
truck
somebody else's life is in your hands.
The truck was not near as nervous as the waiting, the holding your breath for a minute and a half for that car to get there.
It's still hard for me to think of trucks as race cars because they just were meant to push and pull things, not necessarily race. But here we are today, and pickups are one of the most popular things out there. How about you, Donnie? Tell us about your scary moment.
There's a lot there. Like when I first started crewing for Dave, and just making sure he's safe. That weighs a lot on the crew guy, like what Steve said. When you push him off and he goes off on the horizon, you don't see him anymore at Bonneville. I mean, he's miles away. You hear it, and it's a little nerve-wracking. It's you just want to make sure he's okay and everything's good. So that's a little nerve-wracking as a crew guy. But you do it enough, you know what to expect. You know the car. You have faith in it. Everyone did their job. You get a really good crew, and it all comes together. But for me, I finally had my old shit moment last year. I'm driving the Roadster. It's an old top fuel motor that we detuned. So I made the stupid mistake. The run before, I told my crew chief, John Beck, I said, can you give this thing some more power? This thing is just not cutting it. And he said, hold my beer and watch this, and type the thing. And he stepped on it. We went right to the nitro. We added we changed the fuel system around. And my next pass was all over the place. It's a short wheelbase Roadster. We don't have any wings for downforce. We're pushing, like you said, a brick through the air. So you come across what you call an arrow wall. So you get to a certain point, it takes a lot of power to push through this, and if you can't push through it correctly, the car becomes unstable. And when it's unstable, that means you're either going to spin out, you're going to go off the course, you just can't control the car anymore. And so it's kind of similar to that red Roadster over there. It's kind of similar setup with supercharger sticking out through the hood and everything like that. So it's kind of hard to, kind of difficult to describe driving it, but it's like riding a bucking Bronco, but you're on eggshells because you can't oversteer it because you're going to lose it. You can't give it too much throttle because you're going to spin the tires. So last year, once I made the fatal mistake and asked for more power, went down through there, and I got to 2.5 going into 3 mile marker. I was over at 308, and the car broke loose and went sideways on me. That was probably the first time I said, oh crap, this is not going to be good. But the car saved itself. I don't think it was me, but it came back and I was able to save it. And I said, you know what, I'm probably good. And I threw the parachutes out at this point. I was watching the tack. I knew where I was. I knew it was well over the record, so I knew I was going to qualify. But as a driver, typically for me, you have the nervousness before you get in the car. For me, once I actually get in the car and sit in it, I'm done. I'm good. Let's go. I don't get nervous anymore. Like Al said, everything goes really slow. I can look at the tack, I can do things in the car, but you're at the same time, the car's one side of the course, the other side of the course, you're steering it, and you go back and look at the video, and you're like, wow, the video doesn't really show what happened, but because in your head, you know, everything's slowing down, but you're taking so much in.
Gotcha.
Why it's happening.
Yeah.
And so you retain it, remember it, but you look at the video and like, oh, wow, it doesn't really look all that exciting. But
We're going to let Dave do this, but it brings up something. I did a story for the New York Times about women in drag racing, but in the professional ranks. And what I found from the gals in each one of them, think about drag racing. They, instead of going several miles to set a record, and I don't know, did I mention how you set a record at Bonneville? Both the long and short course get 2 miles of run up. The short course is everything without a parachute, everything at 175 and below. and they shut off after 1 mile because they're not going to go much faster. They don't need a parachute. Most of these people are on the long course. You get the 2-mile run up, then you get to run from the 2 to the 3, a time mile, the 3 to the 4, from the 4 to the 5, and that's where they throw their parachute. And it depends on what they see and how they tune. At the end of the 5 mile, they have a speed trap, drag racing. It's about 60 feet before and I think 60 feet after the finish line. And that tells the drivers and the builders, is this thing still accelerating after 5 or is it a little low? So if their last mile was 300 miles an hour and the terminal speed was 310, they know there's more in that puppy. If it's at 290, they know that it gave up everything in that last mile. So that makes a big difference. When I was talking to the gals about how they explained a run that was 5 seconds or less, I got the answer not necessarily from them. They told me, but the crew chiefs all said what they do in those few seconds, we see it in the data, and they all have data in their cars, but it takes them a 20 to 30-minute conversation with the driver to understand. When the women would tell them, oh, it was about 400 feet or 120 feet out, this happened. Then at 400, then at 1,000, this happened. This is when they were still doing quarter-mile stuff, not 1,000 feet. And what came out of her mouth matched the data points almost precisely. So that's a lot of what he's talking about, what you have in that feel. Everything slows down for them, and they easily process it, but you gotta get comfortable with it. And that's one of the things that Al talked about. He had to get comfortable with it. When he runs at 400, whoop, did it just die? Oh no, there it is. He was saying to me that he would have to keep his head off the roll bar padding because the engine was solid mounted to his chassis, yeah? If he put his helmet back, the vibration would be so great, it would blur his vision completely and he couldn't see. So driving along at that speed, he's doing this, but when you throw the parachute, you don't want to do that because the car is going to go wham and drag you back. So he has to remember to put his head back there when he's done. So that's part of the driving that goes on with these things. Anyway, I wanted to key on that because it reminded on how slow speed is. Dave, you want to tell us about did your Roadster ever scare you?
I think you summed it up.
Marcia, tell me about your scary moments.
You don't have time to be scared, really. You can be nervous. The only time I got a little scared is at the end of the run, it's pretty lonely. When you're sitting there and you feel all the heat after you stop, especially if it's a long 8 miles or something, and waiting for your support crew to come get me out of here, because I'm feeling the heat. And that's it.
So you didn't try and get out yourself. You waited for them to come fetch you.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Tanis, the last scary story.
I agree with Marcia. You really don't have time to be scared. You just get in the car, you know what you're supposed to do, and you run through all the things you must do at each time along the track. I mean, you're actually mentally having your run. The only time that it became really a concern was at about the 3.5 mile, 4 mile, we'd start to get a side wind. And that can cause the car to stop moving around. So there's this point when you're in the car and you're just hoping for the 5 mile to come up before you lose control of the car. And you wonder, you know you're on this edge, and you know that edge could disappear at any moment, and you're going for a ride. So that was the only time, and especially if the motor wasn't continuing to accelerate. If you've got that power, you got control of that car. So it's only when we had a weaker motor, we were trying to raise a record that was, we were so close and we were just trying everything to get there. So those times were concerning, but I don't ever remember being afraid. But one could make the argument that when Seth got airlifted to go to the hospital, that I would be afraid. The only thing is that he is such a lucky guy that when they called me and told me that he had crashed, because I was in school and I couldn't get there in the October meet, when they told him he has crashed, Tanis, get to Salt Lake. Says crash the car, I'll call you back. Click. I thought, what's he so upset about? There is no way this guy is hurt. And in reality, yeah, that was the case. So anyway, he's a very lucky guy, so I have great faith in that.
I remember that. You know what he was crying about? He couldn't go skiing that winter. The doctor said, Oh, he was all crying because he couldn't go skiing.
Anyway, there's a lot of stories of all of our families and all of our craziness out there, but yeah, it's been a great ride.
And you bring up the crosswind. Bonneville is a place where you can go very fast, but when the crosswinds come, you see the mountains on the side there, they're a little in shadow, and even on the cover of the book, it's a little easier. At Bonneville, those mountains on one side are very close, but they also dip down, and there's this one spot. Remember the earthquakes? Well, that's where the water went down. Well, there's a really low spot at a certain point, depending on where they put the track. And if the wind's gonna come from the side, it's gonna happen there. And they know that, and they kind of prepare for it. Like, they know that, the tires may be going a little flat, I know what I have to do. They know if there's gonna be a problem with the crosswind, it's gonna happen there. They all know that. But that really does take the car and put it into a whole new set of rules. Listen, before we go any further, it's about 8:30, and I don't want to hold anybody. If you need to go, I want to take Helen, do you want this to stop? Do we have any more questions? Would you like to keep going? Raise your hand if you'd like to keep going, because we don't want to keep you here. But if you need to go, this would be a time where we would, say thank you and scurry out. I don't want to hold you in your seat. Oh, they all want to stay. All right. Oh, and we've got a question here. Yes, sir. This gentleman, Andrew, would like to know, were there any specific material considerations that you chose one over the other, and why? Yeah? Is that the question? Okay. Who wants to go first about material? Are you talking about the frame or the body or both? Both.
I'll just try it. I'm not an expert on this, but we always, instead of using 4130, we always used mild steel. And just
Chrome moly tubing, yeah. But the mild steel.
Mild steel over that. Because there's advantage and disadvantage to both, whatever. And actually, chrome moly 4130 is a lot stronger, a lot better, but we would make up for that in the construction of it. And there would be plenty of gussets, plenty of this, plenty of that, because weight was not a real factor with us.
Steve, the Steve Demon had a lot of modern stuff. Why did you choose certain things? And, this new body from Knapp or the other stuff? What were the decisions that George made about materials and why?
Well, like when Al did his stuff, it was a different era. So their traction control capabilities and the way they monitored things were not available.
That's a good point. Al Teague started his push to high speeds around 1975. Mr. Poteet and Watt.
First time I ever went to the Salt was 2006.
Okay, there you go. Big difference. Al had finished driving for 4 years before that.
So what we looked at was, because of the arrow on our car and the arrow that we available for information with our car, we took the opposite route. It's still a 5-mile drag race. I've never seen Alan Johnson bolt weight to a dragster. So it's still got to accelerate from point A to point B in a certain amount of time because we're limited on length.
So that made the choices for the material then?
Yeah, so it's all chromoly, and we had one fiberglass car, the Goldspeed Demon's carbon. The Lakeshore I just built for Dave Pilgrim, that orange one, that's carbon. And then the new car we have is already made, Tom Hanna built it, and it's made out of aluminum.
So then maybe the answer is it depends on the era that you're talking about, on what they need to do to stay safe. Like I said, they start with 500 miles an hour to stay safe, and they go backwards from there. That's a little different than how you design a car.
So
Anybody else? Huh?
Danny talked about acceleration rate, like what was your point 3?
What was your acceleration, Danny? .32 to .38.
We're usually 0.38 to 0.42. So that's the difference. Like when Danny's car goes, it would go, and we could actually, from the 4 to the 5, we would accelerate another 50 miles an hour, where he was stuck at the 4. So it's just different. I mean, his car is built 50 years ago. Had we all had brand new cars, we'd all be going the same speed.
Okay, Al, your turn, and then I remember what Dave said.
What Steve's saying is absolutely true. When I got into it and this and that in the early 60s or whatever, I looked at all the other cars, and I wasn't an engineer, or I didn't have a degree or anything. But in my case, the rear end was solid. There was no suspension in the rear end. The tires had 100 and some odd pounds of air in them, and this and that, and it was a different deal. But now we have technology, and if you had a solid rear end now at Bonneville, it's so rough and everything, you have to suspend it. You have to go along. So it's a matter of timing and what they used to run, and this and that. So everything's changed.
Yeah, and one of the things I remember when I was writing a story about Mr. Teague recently, I called Dave Davidson and I asked him about the speed and what he thought of Al Teague. The thing that he said, if Al had the horsepower that was available to us back in the day, he certainly would have went 300 miles an hour in his Roadster long before I did. Now, this is the guy that holds the record now, and that's the difference with how his Roadster was built opposed to how Mr. Teague's Roadster was built. I also need to say, with no offense intended to any of the engineers, this fella and this 104-year-old fella who has been in business for more than, 77, 78 years now? I'm talking about you, Ed. They have no education. Out of a pittance of cash, an abundance of desire, and lots of friends. That's what this man went from 0 to 409 miles an hour in a homemade machine. But he will be the first to tell you he didn't do it. He and all of his friends did it, and not one of them wanted to be paid. It took them years and years, from 1975 to 1991, when the car finally set its 409 record. His Streamliner is the first and only American Streamliner to set 2 world records. But in 2002, he knew that the design aspects of what he had put together worked for him, but things like the Speed Demon were coming out. The 911 Roadster was there, right? Mr. Borshevitz had put the powertrain of electricity into his. Danny repurposed his car. He knew that that car had done all it could, and it was the next one. So for everybody that's up here, all of you in the audience, what are you gonna do? Why don't you, anybody else want to talk about any of the materials, or are we, oh, wait, we got a question.
Non-material question. I'm just curious, I've been married 50 years. In that 50 years, I've deduced one thing. Women process things differently than men process things. I'm curious, any opinions from the women on the panel?
Okay.
As to how high speed affects them?
Okay, so the question from this gentleman, that women seem to process things different from men. That's his opinion, his thoughts, and Judy does not agree. But do you see that you make any difference decisions based on any of the other guy drivers? The 3 gals. Oh, Judy says she makes better decisions.
It might have been different. They don't separate the men from the women as far as class. Women don't have their own class. We have to go against the men's records. It's all just a record.
It's not a men's record, it's a record.
Or, when I started, it was all men's records, so that's why I said that. But, so I don't process it any different. Speed is speed to me.
Janice, same for you?
I think we're all different, men or women, so we may approach something differently. I get real quiet before I'm going to do something crazy like this, and other people are much more outgoing and talkative, and I stay in my own lane. So I think we're all different, but I don't know. We all come to those decisions with different background. So I couldn't make that. Yeah, but it's a valid question. I certainly agree with that.
All right, my dear, what about you?
As you guys were talking, you were saying that you were doing an electric, and I think you were probably the only one on the panel who was fully electric in your machine. So my question is, do you feel like electric cars are capable of higher speeds? Is that the future beyond 90?
Well, when cars started, they were all electric, but this lady wants to know if she thinks Mr. Boshevitz, who did the powertrain for the electric 444 car that owns the world record, does he believe that electricity is going to be the future of land speed racing? Is that your question? Sort of? Yeah, okay. Eddie? Huh? Is it possible they'll be faster than any kind of internal combustion?
I'm going to get shy here, but yes, absolutely. I'm not here to save the world or talk about green energy or anything like that. I'm actually quite the opposite. I was a gearhead my whole life. I love gasoline, love the smell of it. But there's something about electric motors. They produce instant torque instantaneously. So at 1 RPM, I could be at full tilt. I have a lot more controllability of what I'm doing in my vehicles, and the motors are very simple. There's two moving parts: the bearings and the rotor itself. I got less stuff to brake. I have more controllability. Our 62-pound rotor produces about 603 horsepower, and that's the only moving part. I can move it with my fingers. Battery technology is coming up very quickly, and that's kind of our only downfall right now is batteries. Once we get past the battery stage and they become lighter and lighter, we're definitely going to surpass gas. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
And from the historical perspective, remember the cars I showed you on that street where Tanis was? Both of those cars were electric. Both.
I'd like to
So
add
we've
something.
come around.
I'd like to add something to that. That's forgetting that what we love is the sound of those motors. I mean, yeah. And when you hear that motor and you hear the RPMs coming up, I don't care what they do in electric. That's fine. That's great. We love innovation, right? But unless they put a recording on the motor, I'm not really up for it. But I happen to be one of these people that just love the sound of a motor. So that's me.
Touche.
Yeah,
I can't compete with that. That is true.
All right, think about it, all you hear. When's the last time when a Tesla went by, you went, oh.
Well, if you guys do go on our YouTube channel, it's out on Revolt. If you just look up Revolt Systems, there is a video of the run of the car, and it is not quiet. It is extremely loud. There's a lot of whining with the quick change rear end. We did have a Gates blower belt on there. It was 6 inches wide and making its own noise. And I do miss the sound. That is something I do miss quite a bit. But with that said, there are other sounds that we now hear that we weren't able to hear before. I have a 65 Mustang with one of our electric motors in it, and I hear suspension. I hear tires differently. I hear gearboxes differently. I put guys that have been driving gas their whole lives in my electric cars, and they go, I had no idea that all this other audible stuff was going on. I race electric motorcycles and run them all the time. I can hear what kind of substrate I'm on now. When I'm taking a corner, I can hear my chain. So yes, I do miss the roar, but now I got all these other sensories that I never thought I had before, and I am able to pay attention and hear things go bad before they go because there's not an engine overbearing it. But yes, we don't have that. And I won't put a speaker on my Tesla ever. I think it's really lame. Don't fake the funk.
All right. Are there any other questions? Oh, right, way in the back. You, sir?
You guys are obviously demanding a lot of speed, which puts a lot of stress on the engines. How often do you guys have to rebuild these engines? And my second question is, what type of fuels are you guys using for like power? You guys think it's experimental? You guys throwing corn in there, ethanol? How do you guys get at that?
All right, so the question is, how often do you have to rebuild the engines because you probably put a lot of stress on them? And then he wants to have you talk about some of the fuel. Take it away, somebody. Al Teague.
Yeah, it all depends how hard you run them. And if you're running them real hard, it's going to put a stress on the engine, of course, and the parts. and especially with nitro, you just never know. But sometimes, in one case, we were up there and we ran 7 runs, and we finally ended up at doing our 409 record, not even taking the heads off the engine. So some years are different. Some years are good. Some years, if you run them hard, you're gonna have to look at them and change them. I did change the bearings every 2 runs, the rod bearings, and that was about it. But it all depends how hard you run them.
There you go. All right. And I've been given the high sign. What about the fuel? We want to talk about the fuel, answer his last question about the fuel? Oh, and I have to tell you, this is the last question. I've just been given the note because it is getting a little later and we all have to go home. I've got a 2-hour drive ahead of me.
Our fuel of choice is nitromethane. We take a Chrysler Hemi just like Al had, and we can easily make horsepower nitromethane. The motors are already kind of proven in the drag race world. We took an old drag race combination, kind of detuned it down a little bit. So we got to a level that we figured out where we can run it, run the number where the car can handle with, again, kind of what Al was saying, once you find that little groove where it's working, we don't have to tear it down. But when we first started, I promise you, we were knocking the rack out of it, taking the pistons and rods out of it, checking the bearings. Nitro is could be very bad in an explosion, and it sent the rods out of the block real quick and big fireball. So we were very cautious, but we got to the point where we figured out how to run it. We got a lot of data on the car. We watch it every pass. Anything that seems out of the ordinary, the motor comes apart. We look at it. So it's a lot of trial and error, unfortunately. Sometimes it's expensive, but a lot of data collection that got us to the point where we minimized the maintenance.
We've never rebuilt any of our motors.
That's all right. We make 5,000 horsepower.
All right. Anybody else on the panel want to add to that? I love it. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to help me thank Danny, Seth, Eddie, Judy, Al, Steve, Donnie, Dave, Marcia, and, excuse me, Tanis. You are in the company of some of the fastest people on earth. Wow. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying.